What's up guys, I'm Joe. Today I'm talking about the new Jack White album, Boarding House Reach. So Jack White is back with Boarding House Reach. This is his third solo studio album. White is of course known for his tenure with the rock duo The White Stripes, as well as stints with groups such as the Raconteurs and the Dead Weather. With 2012's Blunderbuss, White began the solo portion of his career, which saw him branching out his sound a little bit. The album offered some of his classic garage rock sound, but of course with added instrumentation filling up the background, as opposed to the more stripped down approach of the White Stripes. But at the same time, the album saw White getting into some folk territory, with a track like Love Interruption, or otherwise a funkier, groovier sound with tracks such as Freedom at 21. His next record, Lazaretto, though also with its fair share of heavy rock and distorted guitar, sort of doubled down on the folksier country style approach. While I like the record, it was more like an okay release for me. Not one that I've returned to quite as much as the first album. With this new one, Boarding House Reach, White pretty much throws the sort of formula he had been using out the window, resulting in his most experimental record yet. Right off the bat, I'll say that this is one that absolutely deserves multiple listens. Initially, I was pretty thrown off by the record. I didn't really know what to make of it. It seemed like pretty chaotic to me. Sometimes even jarring. The album throws all sorts of genres at you, including, his usual blues and his garage rock sound, but also the folk from previous albums, and then even getting into hip-hop influences, some spoken word narrative, electronics, and jazz. After a few listens, though, this one really grew on me quite a lot, and it seems that White has a sort of method to his madness here. Connected by Love is the first single and probably the most accessible song on here. It had many expecting that this would be White's electronic album, and while there are surging electronic sounds below the surface here and in a few other instances throughout the album, this certainly isn't a proper electronic record by any means. It's not what a lot of bands seem to be doing lately, which is kind of do their usual thing and throwing electronics on top of everything. Connected by Love, I liked the song from the beginning actually, but it has really managed to become even more epic for me on repeat listens. I love the gospel kind of feel to it, especially in the vocals, both Jack's vocals and the chanting "We're Connected" in the background from the singers there, all of which plays over a song that really drives, it really builds, and the energy just continues to flow through it towards the end. The next track, Why Walk a Dog, really threw me a bit at first, and I honestly really didn't like this one on first or second listen. At first glance, it seems like White is sort of berating pet owners on the track, which left me feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Personally, I think I could say that I treat my dog a lot better than most humans. However, in the context of the album, after a couple listens, I don't think it's quite so surface level, and in fact, I think the dogs he's referring to are probably just your everyday person. Where he refers to the free birds swabbling outside, he seems to be alluding to politicians and those in positions of power. So that sort of realization of the possibility in the lyrics, plus the great instrumental, really drew me back into the song. It has a really dark, cool atmosphere to it. It pairs well with Jack's sort of haunting delivery on the vocals, and the ferocious rumbling guitar lead that comes through later in the track really surges through. Corporation serves as mostly a sort of jam track, but definitely one that I love. The drums get things going with a sort of immigrant song type feel, and are just a really killer groove. Not to mention the funky keyboard lines and the infectious "Who's With Me" chant going on. I actually read that White had been listening to a lot of funk, obviously, but also some Miles Davis, and that's who was coming to mind in moments in Corporation and Respect Commander, even over and over and over, where White rides these grooves out and really has fun with them. It reminds me sort of Davis's more electric jam-based period, think around the Bitches Brew era. Respect Commander, another great track. It serves as a cool jam with a Hendrix-inspired riff, before ultimately going into a darker, more driven second section. And you could hear little inklings of jazz-inspired piano on the rather chaotic Ice Station Zebra, which, surprisingly enough, features Jack White rapping. He had kind of dabbled into that a little bit with tracks like Lazaretto, or maybe off of the last Dead Weather album, there was that $3 Hat song, I think it was called. But here he really goes for it, he really goes all out. All this is on top of some crazy sounding piano, where it just sounds like he's beating the thing, and some interesting drum, sampling type sounds. This song throughout, especially towards the end, remind me of maybe early Beck, or even Red Hot Chili Peppers, especially with that vocal delivery from White towards the end there, those last couple verses. The song is just really catchy too. What's interesting is, some of the reviews I've seen about the album, Pitchfork. They're saying that White just doesn't have fun with his music ever since he started his solo career. There's no fun in it. He seems like he's too serious about it. And I guess you could say that about the last two records, but I don't know how you could say that about this one. It's just so all over the place, which I think is in a good way. But if he wasn't having fun with this album, I think he's just truly lost his mind. I don't know what other reason there would be to try all these crazy genre-blending things if you weren't having fun with it and you weren't having a good time. Hypermisophoniac, I'm probably butchering that word, but this is really an interesting song. I love the musical side of this, especially what's going on in the guitar. But at the same time, it features some of the most grating and almost frustrating aspects of the album, as far as that machine-esque electronic sound that's really standing out very staunchly in the mix. Especially when you're listening with headphones on, this thing is like right in your ear and it can be pretty distracting. What's interesting enough, though, after a Google search, is that it turns out people suffering with this condition actually have an oversensitivity to sound. So in that way, White really succeeds in putting you into that place and making the listener uncomfortable. Though the song, I think, is so great that I do wish those sounds would get pushed into the mix a little further throughout or just go away. Like, I get the point and I think it's effective, but there is a really cool song kind of like paralleled next to all these noises. There are a number of spoken word tracks on here, as I mentioned, usually over some music. I won't go too much into them, but I feel like they do a cool job of sort of tying things together and serving as interludes or intermissions. The best being Everything You've Ever Learned, which thematically kind of reminds me of like OK Computer era Radiohead. Personally, I love when the track explodes with that Sabbath-like swing to it. The bass guitar is absolutely ripping through the mix, and it's just really great. A really nice, energetic moment to end that track. Over and over and over, a huge standout, possibly my favorite on the record. It's got a fantastic groove and an energy to it, and Jack's fuzzy guitar makes for probably the best riff he's done in his solo career so far, I would argue. There's also something about his vocal delivery that I really love on here that really gets stuck in your head. It just makes for a really memorable song overall, plus that somewhat Spanish tinge, dun 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 dun. I just find that pretty cool. It adds a sort of bizarre aspect to the track to sort of fit in with all the weirdness going on in the rest of the album. So yeah, overall, as I said, definitely give this album a shot. It was certainly a grower for me, but one that grew rather quickly. I've actually seen a handful of comments that say, oh, I listened to it, it was okay, I probably won't go back to it. I would absolutely recommend going back to it. And really, while it seems like it's one that's pretty polarizing right now, with fans either loving or hating it, it strikes me as one that either months or years from now could be seen as a big achievement in his career. Or not, who knows. But it's a really fascinating listen, and there's a lot to dive into with it. So yeah, I'm feeling a strong 4 out of 5 for this one. Let me know what you think of the album in the comments, whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.